Hi everyone and welcome to Fashion Decipher. My name is Sean Williams.
My name is Kevin Moore.
And this week we will be speaking about Fashion Week, the COVID effect. And as everyone knows, COVID has came in and changed everything that we do in every way possible. And we just really want to discuss the changes that had to take place for Fashion Week to exist this year in September 2020. There's so many changes that different designers have practiced and have done, and we just want to explore some of them and who really was inventive, what designers really came up with the best practices. And as Fashion Week travels to Milan and London, we're going to see how the different ways that it's going to be done.
And one of the biggest changes has been just the live shows.
Yeah.
A lot of the shows now are done online, like through I guess Zoom or just direct video.
Mm-hmm.
And then in addition to that, some of the shows, like in New York, for example, weren't in these big buildings anymore. They actually had them in tents.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you could look at fashion shows, make some s'mores. What would you want to do? Yeah.
It was like fashion camping.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah, Herman's would be proud. Or Models. Or they don't exist anymore. Dick's would be proud.
Some of the fashion shows, I do believe, also used building rooftops as a way to display their looks for the new season, and they kept editors and fashion buyers very separate, the 6 feet apart rule, which was key. And I think that was a great way to do it. I wonder if any of these things would be consistently used, because I know prior to COVID, there was a couple of fashion weeks that I think Alexander Wang had his show in Williamsburg, and I think the Kardashians were there, and they were all walking in the street. So it was heading that way because Bryant Park removed it. There's no longer at fashion shows at Bryant Park. Then it moved to Lincoln Center with Mercedes-Benz. That was dissolved. So it's kind of spread out across the city. Mm-hmm. So it was heading this way. I know a lot of it is contained on the West Side Highway, which really wasn't used this year. But now it's I think maybe it gives designers more of a way to be inventive and creative. What do you think?
I mean, long as Mother Nature plays along.
That's true.
I mean, it does actually add to, like you said, a new dimension. I'm worried or curious to see what's going to happen as temperatures drop. Or when it's not, sunny, and when you have rain and maybe snow or temperatures at a certain degree that just makes it that you have to wear thicker fabrics. It's hard to look cute in a thick turtleneck. I mean, it is. I mean, you could try to. But I do think, like you said, it has definitely forced designers to rethink how they're going to do their shows and how they're going to present all their designs in the future.
And especially when you have platforms like social media, I think the digital runway is something that I feel that will only continue to grow. I mean, at the end of the day, people are going to lose jobs when it comes to actually containing fashion shows within a building. But if you do it the digital way, it's in the hands of the consumers a lot faster. It's been heading that way. The trajectory of Fashion Week has been heading that way anyway. A lot of people have scaled back. A lot of designers, I know, Tom Ford had a very small venue at his shop. I know Rebecca Minkoff had a very small one as well. They even had moved some of it to LA. Then some of it was coming back. It's kind of Fashion Week itself in New York and America has been at a loss, and it's kind of spread all over the place. So I think digitally, because social media, once those photos get in the hands of social media, it's in the hands of the consumer. They can judge whether they like it or not, tell you what's hot, and I think that that's the way that Fashion Week should be. I mean, it should be a little more democratic instead of aristocratic. What do you think?
No, I definitely think it had a change. I was wondering, why do you think it took so long for them to even think about, say, a city like LA, as opposed to everything being centric to New York?
I think LA is having this resurgence, especially downtown LA. It's having this gentrification moment, which, I mean, you and I both watched a couple of shows in terms of gentrification in LA. I know we both watched Wyatt Cenac's Problem Areas.
Yeah.
And there was an episode in which he spoke to the homeless problem there on Skid Row, and a lot of them are being displaced as gentrification is taking place down there. Like, it's becoming very artsy, like the new kind of like LES for New York or Soho. A lot of people are moving into like the loft space, the manufacturing spaces. So it's kind of becoming like the it place to be. So I think that's why LA, a lot of designers have decided to move that way. I'm sure it's also cheaper on the bottom line. You know, it hasn't had this huge expense as New York does. You know, I mean, it hasn't grown that way yet. I'm sure it's heading that way. You know, anything that becomes the it thing, prices go up. So I'm sure at some point that's going to happen. But I think that's why LA was a place where people started to say, hey, you know what, let's try LA instead. It's happening. It's a moment. You know, it's this area that we all love. You know, real LA natives talk about that area. They were like, there's nothing down there. A lot like how we say, you know, certain areas in New York are that, like, let's take for instance like Long Island City. All manufacturing buildings, plants, everything that was left over, like the Domino Sugar plant that was in Williamsburg. You know, there's like a lot of stuff that was a Pepsi Cola plant in Long Island City. So now those places are turning to like restaurants and hot spots, and so it's the same thing happening there, I feel.
And it's funny. I would love to see the effects that Fashion Week had as far as the other cities, because you know, New York usually goes first, and it's followed by, I think, was it London next, then Milan. I know Paris, what I was reading and what I've learned now, was probably one of the first ones really affected.
Okay.
You know, because think about when Fashion Week was in New York in February, the virus wasn't known to be here yet.
Right.
London, less so, but by the time Paris Fashion Week was there, that's when France was really starting to go through it. So I wonder if New York felt the same effects as Paris did. You know, because what I have read in articles was that there was a huge tidal wave. Whereas I know a lot of U.S. manufacturers and buyers had begun to cancel their hotel reservations. They just weren't going to Paris at all.
And traveling.
Yeah. Traveling was definitely put on hold. So I wonder if that's going to be a staying thing, or is it going to be how the rest of the world is, where in March and April, especially in the U.S., a lot of things shut down and people wanted to stay home. But as summer hit and people had been quarantining for like 10, 12, 15 weeks, people wanted to get out. So as these new fashion weeks start to happen, will people kind of have the nostalgic, like, you know, I want to get out. I want to go to fashion shows again. I don't want to be in my house anymore, and continue to go to Paris and these other places? Or will the concerns of the virus kind of come back again and people are like, no, I'm just not going to risk dying over to see someone's new skirt?
I definitely think it's the latter of the two. I mean, I do think that people too are still want to go. I mean, I know within New York, I was reading on several different coverages of newspapers, and you know, I think the New York Times style section was talking about how like even the streetwear is different. You know, like people would come to the shows, instead of crowd around, they would just walk, you know, up and down the streets and take photos. Even the look of like dressing up during like the COVID edition, as we're calling it, for Fashion Week is different. You know, there's a lot of denim, it's a lot of like dress down, it's a lot of like, I guess people are reassessing priorities. You know, so yeah, I think they're not going to like, wow, I hate to say this, kill themselves to go to a fashion show. That's not really the right way to say that, but you know what I mean. Yeah. But they're not going to say, you know, I'm really trying to go to this fashion show because I want to be a part of this, but they're doing it in their own way. And I think also too, which is interesting, it brings about a creative side. You know, like it brings this creative. For me, I love the fact that people are being creative when it comes to Fashion Week or when it comes to fashion and style. I love that part. You know, sometimes when you get used to doing something a certain way, it's like boring, it's a routine, it's a rut. Right. So I think now what this has done is allow creatives really to work on their craft, really to change their approach. And like I said, even down to streetwear, you know, like dressing is different. You know, they said it's very relaxed, messenger bags, jeans, joggers, sweats of athleisure. Models are not all dolled up in the high heels like they used to. It's just a different like feeling to it, even though people still were participating.
I wonder though, with some of these fashion houses, is it like a gift for them not to have these fashion shows? Because I assume that putting on these shows are very expensive.
Oh, I'm sure.
And you know, I had read somewhere like certain labels weren't even going to do fashion shows. Like I know, I think Gucci said they're going to do 2 seasonless shows this year. And I know like Saint Laurent said no, we're not doing anything
at all.
And I think Burberry also was mentioning that they may kind of follow the Gucci trend too, and not do shows. I mean, I often wonder like how do fashion shows translate as far as sales? Because when it's all said and done, it's still a business. And if you can do business and do it well without the added expense, it's just like anything in life. If you can sell X amount of product and sell the same amount of product and take away, say, some advertising to save money on that budget, but still your sales don't drop, then why would you create that extra commercial or have that extra show? Especially you're a brand that no one's going to forget about. Right? No one's going to forget Gucci. So if Gucci doesn't do a fashion show, for example, who's not going to still wear it?
Right.
If Saint Laurent says, I'm not going to do a fashion show this year, or I'm going to skip Paris, for example, people still going to buy the stuff. So I wonder, does it even pay to put on these shows for these labels if there's a huge expense? Now you add the danger of death. Does it make sense to even do it?
I mean, I do agree with that statement to some degree. I do feel like it's kind of like how people sometimes approach, who do people have birthday parties or weddings for? You know, is it for the family or is it for the two people who are getting together? So who are the fashion weeks actually for? You know, like you said, at the end of the day, it is a business and they need to fill the department stores. But as with the department stores decline and as so many store closures are happening, where exactly is the buy to wear going? Most of it is online.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like, what is the purpose? Because I know the purpose of the fashion week is to have editors and is to have buyers from department stores there to see what is trending, what is hot, what would actually translate to their clients and get it in their stores. But if that's not happening and people are not in store shopping in brick and mortars, everything is virtual, then what's the need? So I think there's a need for fashion week, but I do believe the virtual way might be more important. It might be a better way, a better approach of doing things. It's just interesting to see how much of it will stay.
And I think doing it virtually, you're allowing more people to see it. So it might take away from the exclusivity of it, but actually it just makes it broader.
Yeah.
And it become an event, kind of like very different type of thing, but kind of like how Versus is.
Yeah.
Versus has become this thing where everybody sits around their phone to watch this. So if you know, for example, Burberry or Gucci or any label is going to have a fashion show and they advertise it way in advance and let everybody know about it and everyone has access, it could become that type of event that everybody's going to sit by, be next to their phone or mirror it to the TV. It becomes a bigger event than it was when it was just a very exclusive event. You know, so I think that could have a positive impact on it.
I definitely like that. I mean, it's just all about making, I think what they also have to realize is that it's not the way it used to be. The elite doesn't control. You know, in this type of, you know, way that we're going, the elite shouldn't remain control over what happens during Fashion Week or how it happens during Fashion Week. I mean, I know they want to serve them because a lot of them are the ones who are spending, you know, the extremes amount of money instead of the everyday aspirational shopper. But I think there's an importance to them. You know, like you're, you know, as anybody who has a business, when you have regulars, you want to cater to them to some degree. You know, like if you have people who are serving the brand as consistently buying, I know that that's something you want to make available to them. So I actually agree with that.
And I think it could like level the playing field for like up and coming and smaller brands. Because before you had these large brands who had like budgets who were crazy, excuse me, they could afford to rent out whatever.
Yeah.
And you're a smaller brand, like so you'll have maybe a big brand could rent out, I'm making this up, Times Square. Whereas you're a smaller brand, you're renting out the side of an alley, you know, and you're paying rent to the rats. But now, if everything's online, it changes everything. It becomes like an equalizer.
Right.
Like no one's online presence is gonna be that much better than somebody else's. As long as you have a great web developer, you have great like technicians working for you, it's a lot different versus I'm trying to rent out this space and you're trying to rent out that space and my money or my budget is not on the same level as yours. So I think smaller brands might actually benefit from this as well.
I like that idea. I think you really hit a key point right there. I think that it gives other brands the opportunity to have exposure. Yes. You know, like just never what you have ever seen before. Because I know a lot of people will carry on in front of near Fashion Week and do their own like kind of ambush if
Yeah.
you will, like kind of like Fashion Week, have their own photographers. But this gives them, it, like you said, it levels the playing field. It gives them a chance to be up there with the Gucci's and the Versace's, showing virtually. And you know, if everyone, like you said, is like a versus moment. If that week is Fashion Week, everyone's gonna log online to see whatever's presented.
Exactly.
And if you hashtag it the same, if the everyday designer who's trying to make it hashtags it the same way that Gucci or Versace or Saint Laurent does, it's gonna hit those same algorithms and they're gonna appear. So when people search those hashtags, they're gonna appear right along with them. So you're absolutely correct. I think that's such a great point.
Yeah, I mean, one thing what could be cool if they did like a central site.
Okay.
What if it's like fashionweek.net,
Mm-hmm.
and this site has all of the fashion weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how Zoom is, and they have like breakout rooms.
Mm-hmm.
You could just have like NewYorkFashionWeek.com or whatever, and then have breakout tabs and hyperlinks on this, and you could click on who you want to see.
I think it's a good idea. I feel like CFDA came out with something similar.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's called like Fashion 360 or something like that. I think. I think they came out with something close to it. It's like a virtual way to view all the fashion shows. Maybe it's on Vogue. Maybe it's Vogue 360. I'm actually trying to double check that. But
Okay.
yeah, I think it's actually a good idea. So you were really on brand when when it comes to those ideas. It's true.
I appreciate that. But I definitely think this is gonna be.
I think it's Runway 360. That's it. Runway 360 for Vogue.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Not to be cliche, but I do think this is gonna be the new normal, and
I know.
we have to
say
get,
that so much.
Yeah, we gotta get used to it.
Yeah.
You know, and some of these changes aren't terrible though.
At all.
And sometimes it takes something this drastic to shake industries and make them kind of see the light. You know,
I totally agree with that.
because what's the motivation to ever change? You know,
Nothing. When you get stuck in those ruts, like I was saying earlier, like what gives anybody else an opportunity to shine if you do the same thing over and over? And I think, like you said, the whole key is bringing new brands in, giving like new breath to a dying industry. I mean, Fashion Week itself has been going through changes. I mean, we've had our own episode talking about the evolution of Fashion Week. You know, I suggest everybody go back to listen to that one.
Yes.
And I think, you can kind of see where it started and as it, has been morphing. So it's been changing anyway.
Yes.
And maybe this was a much needed thing. I mean, as we have all learned, 2020 has really upset a lot of things. And it's really showing people priorities. It's showing people really where that they need to put their focus on. And I think it's done that to the fashion industry.
100%. 2020 is on a mission, and it still got 2 more months to go.
It really does, though.
Yeah. 2021, please. Please.
Yeah, please. And that's the big PLE, yeah, please.
Yeah, please. Let's not go down this
Let's
route.
take a break.
Yes,
Yeah.
definitely. But I definitely think we covered a lot today.
Yeah, and I think that we're only going to revisit this back in February, just to really talk about where it's going and see what practices have stayed. This is what's going to be, as you said, like everyone's saying, the new normal until we actually there is actually like a viable vaccine and then things actually are changing. Then we can actually see what actually stays and what's permanent and what's not. So it'll be interesting to keep checking up on this.
I totally agree, and I'll be staying tuned.
Absolutely.
In my bunker.
Absolutely. All right. So we'll see everyone next time. We're going to put up some of the images on our website if you want to see what Fashion Week has looked like. I definitely love and just shout out to what Marc Jacobs has done. He has dressed his mannequins, and not only with the scarves that appeared from the February 2020 fashion show, but he's also put masks on them. So if the mannequins could wear masks, people, you could wear masks too.
Yes.
So those photos will be up on fashiondecipher.com. We will also put more information on Fashion Decipher Instagram.
Yes.
All right.
All right. Until
we'll
next
see
time.
We'll see you soon. Hi guys, it's Sean. Make sure you visit our website, fashiondecipher.com, to get a visual on what we're talking to you about. Check out pics from events, of guest speakers, and exhibits. If you miss anything we post, you can visit our archives page. Also, while you're there, hit that subscribe button, leave your email, and if you like, a comment. Tell us what you think or what you would want to hear on an upcoming episode. Don't forget to follow and friend Fashion Decipher on social media. Check out what we're up to. Speak with you next week.